Chapter 1. The forest didn't care that she was dying. Elara stumbled through the undergrowth, her bare feet slicing open on jagged rocks hidden beneath the frost. Blood left a trail behind her, dark, damning, impossible to hide. Her breath came in ragged gasps that burned her throat, each inhale feeling like swallowing shards of glass. The trees loomed above her like silent sentries, their branches clawing at the sky, and the moon, that traitorous beautiful moon, watched her flee with cold indifference. She pressed a trembling hand to her side, where the wound gaped open, hot and wet. The blow had come from behind. Of course it had. Cowards always struck from the shadows. Her former pack didn't have the decency to face her when they cast her out. No trial, no ceremony, just Marcus's voice, sharp as a blade, cutting through the night. "You're nothing. You were always nothing, and I reject you." The mate bond had snapped like a rotten rope, and the pain had driven her to her knees. She'd felt it tear through her chest, a brutal severing that left her hollowed out and gasping. But she hadn't stayed down. She couldn't, because the moment Marcus rejected her, the others had turned on her too. His beta, his enforcers, even the Omegas she'd once called friends. They'd looked at her with disgust, with fear, as if she carried some contagion that might spread. Maybe she did. Elara's legs buckled, and she crashed against a tree trunk, bark scraping her palms as she fought to stay upright. The world tilted dangerously. Her vision blurred at the edges, darkness creeping in like ink spilled across parchment. She couldn't pass out. Not here. Not in the Vale Woods where the old laws didn't reach, and predators roamed freely. Thunder rumbled overhead, low and threatening. The storm had been building for hours, clouds swallowing the stars one by one, until the sky became a bruised, angry mass. It suited her. Everything suited her pain tonight. The cold that bit through her thin dress, the wind that howled like a grieving mother, the ice beginning to crystallize on the branches above. She pushed off the tree and forced herself forward. One foot, then another. Her wolf whimpered inside her, weak and wounded, barely a flicker of presence that should have terrified her. A shifter without their wolf was as good as dead. But Elara had stopped being afraid of death somewhere between the rejection and the third kick to her ribs. What terrified her now was something else entirely. The power. It had started the moment the bond broke, a surge of heat that exploded through her veins like wildfire, scorching everything in its path. For one brilliant, horrifying second, silver flames had erupted from her skin, licking up her arms, dancing across her fingertips. The pack had screamed. Marcus had stumbled backward, his face pale with shock, and then the flames had vanished as quickly as they'd come, leaving only the scent of ozone and burned earth. Abomination. That's what Marcus had called her. Cursed. That's what the pack elders had whispered, as they'd driven her toward the border. Dangerous. That's what she'd seen in every pair of eyes that watched her leave. Elara's knees hit the ground, and this time she didn't have the strength to rise. The silver flames flickered weakly beneath her skin, visible through her veins like lightning trapped under glass. She couldn't control it, couldn't understand it. All she knew was that it was waking up, stretching like something that had been caged too long, and it was hungry. Footsteps. Her head snapped up, every instinct screaming danger, even as her body refused to obey. Someone was coming through the trees. No. Not someone, multiple someones. The sound of boots crunching through frost, steady and unhurried. Hunting. They'd sent trackers after her. Of course they had. Marcus couldn't risk her survival, couldn't risk her speaking about what she'd become. Dead Omegas told no tales. Elara dragged herself behind a fallen log, biting down on her lip to keep from crying out as pain flared through her side. The footsteps grew closer. Voices drifted through the darkness, low and male. Can't be far. Blood trails fresh. Better hope we find her before he does. Who? Don't be stupid. You know who. These are his lands now. If the Alpha King finds a wounded Omega bleeding out in his territory, then we're all dead anyway. Move faster. The Alpha King. Ilara's heart stuttered. Everyone knew the stories. Everyone feared the name. He'd united the northern packs through blood and brutality, crushing any who opposed him. They said he was 7 feet of savage violence wrapped in human skin. They said his wolf was black as sin and twice as merciless. They said he took what he wanted and destroyed what he didn't. And his territory started exactly where her old packs ended. She'd crossed the border. The silver flames pulsed brighter beneath her skin, responding to her fear, feeding on it. No, not now. She couldn't let it out, couldn't let them see. A twig snapped directly above her. Ilara looked up into the face of Marcus's beta, and his smile was all teeth. Found you. Before we continue this story, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now, because here at Clarissa Romance Collections, we don't just tell stories, we take you on journeys that will wreck you in the best way possible. This tale is just beginning, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's dive deeper into Ilara's world together. Chapter 2. The beta lunged. Ilara rolled, her body moving on pure instinct even as agony tore through her side. His hand caught nothing but air, fingers scraping the bark where her head had been a heartbeat before. She scrambled to her feet, stumbling, the world spinning violently. 2 more figures emerged from the shadows, Marcus's enforcers, their eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction. Nowhere to run. Little Omega, the beta crooned, circling her slowly. Should have stayed down, should have died quietly. She backed up, her spine hitting solid trunk, trapped. The silver flames roared beneath her skin, begging for release, burning through her control like paper. Her hands began to glow, that telltale luminescence seeping through her fingertips. The beta's eyes widened. She's doing it again. The temperature plummeted. It happened so fast that Ilara almost missed it. One moment the beta was reaching for her, and the next he was airborne, his body crashing into a tree 20 feet away with a sickening crack. The enforcers spun, weapons drawn, but they didn't get the chance to use them. A shadow detached itself from the darkness between the trees. No, not a shadow. A man. He moved like violence incarnate, like every nightmare wrapped in flesh and fury. Tall didn't begin to describe him. He dominated the space, made the forest feel small. Broad shoulders stretched beneath a black coat that moved like liquid night. Dark hair fell across a face, carved from granite and rage. And his eyes, God, his eyes burned with an amber light that seemed to pierce straight through to her soul. The Alpha King. The first enforcer swung his blade. The stranger caught his wrist mid-strike, twisted, and the sound of breaking bone echoed through the clearing. The enforcer's scream died as a massive hand closed around his throat, lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. Those burning amber eyes never blinked. "You're hunting on my land," the stranger said, and his voice was gravel and smoke, authority wrapped in dark promise, uninvited. "We're just," the second enforcer began. "Leaving." The word cracked like a whip. The enforcer on the ground dropped, gasping, and the stranger's gaze shifted to the beta who was struggling to his feet. "Unless you'd prefer I send Marcus your heads as a message about respecting borders." The beta's face went white. "You know, I know everything that happens in my territory." The stranger took one step forward, and all 3 of Marcus's wolves stumbled backward. "I know a crescent moon beta just crossed into Shadow Peak lands without permission. I know you're tracking a wounded female. And I know," his voice dropped to something deadly, "that if you're not gone in the next 10 seconds, you won't be leaving at all." They ran. Ilara watched them disappear into the trees, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The adrenaline that had kept her standing began to fade, and her legs trembled violently. The silver flames still pulsed beneath her skin, visible and damning, but she couldn't force them down, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears, and the man now turning toward her with those impossible eyes. He studied her in silence, not the way Marcus had looked at her, with contempt and dismissal, but with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare, like he was reading every secret carved into her bones, every wound festering in her soul. She should have been terrified. She was terrified, but underneath the fear bloomed something else, something that felt dangerously like recognition. "Elara," he said softly. Her heart stopped. "How do you know my name?" "I've been waiting for you." The words hung in the frozen air between them, impossible and true. He took another step closer, moving with predatory grace, and she saw the power radiating off him in waves. This wasn't just an alpha. This was something ancient, something vast. The forest itself seemed to bow in his presence, the trees leaning toward him like supplicants before a king. "You're hurt?" he continued, his gaze dropping to her side where blood soaked through her dress. Something flickered across his face. Anger, maybe, or concern. "How long have you been bleeding?" "I don't." Her voice cracked. "I don't know. Hours. Since your mate rejected you." Not a question. A statement of fact delivered with quiet fury. "Since Marcus threw you away like you were nothing." Elara's throat tightened. "You really do know everything." "Not everything." He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell cedar and winter storm on his skin. "I don't know why you're glowing like a fallen star. I don't know what that power is that's burning through your veins." His hand lifted, hovering near her face, but not quite touching. "But I know you're dying if you don't let me help you." "Why would you help me?" The question tore from her chest. "You don't know me. I'm nothing. I'm just—" "You are not nothing." The words came out sharp, commanding, absolute. His amber eyes blazed brighter. "You have never been nothing, Elara. They were just too blind and too afraid to see what you really are." The silver flames surged in response to his words, crackling along her arms like living lightning. She gasped, trying to pull them back, but her control was shredding. I can't stop it." "Then don't." His hand finally made contact, fingers wrapping gently around her wrist. The touch sent a shock through her entire system, but not of pain, of relief, of rightness. The flames didn't burn him. Instead they seemed to recognize him, curling around his hand like greeting an old friend. "Stop fighting yourself." "It's dangerous," she whispered. Marcus said. "Marcus is a fool." The contempt in his voice was scorching. He rejected his fated mate because he was too weak to handle her power. That's not your shame. It's his. Fated mate. The word struck her like a physical blow. We weren't. The bond wasn't. The bond was wrong. He said it with such certainty that she almost believed him. Forced. Incomplete. A pale imitation of what you were actually meant for. His thumb traced a gentle circle on the inside of her wrist, right over her racing pulse. "Tell me, Elara, when he rejected you, did you feel like you were losing half your soul? Or did you feel like chains were breaking?" She stared at him, her mind reeling, because he was right. God help her, he was right. The pain had been real, the agony of the severing undeniable, but underneath it all had been something else. Relief, freedom, the sensation of a door opening that she hadn't even known was closed. "Who are you?" she breathed. His smile was slight, dangerous, and devastating. "They call me Kale, Alpha King of the Shadow Peak territory and the Northern Alliance." He tilted his head, studying her with an expression that made her feel like the most important thing in his world. "But you can call me the male who's been searching for you for 5 years. 5 years. The number didn't make sense. That's impossible. I've been with the Crescent Moon Pack since you were 18. Kale's jaw tightened. "Since your parents died, and Marcus's father took you in as an act of mercy. Since they bound your power and told you that you were weak, that you were Omega, that you were lucky anyone would want you." Every word landed like a knife between her ribs. "How could you possibly?" "Because I felt it the day they locked you away." His voice dropped to something raw, almost painful. "I felt a piece of the world go dark. I've been following that darkness ever since, waiting for the moment it would break free." His hand slid from her wrist to her palm, fingers threading through hers. "Waiting for you to break free." The silver flames danced between their joined hands, brighter now, more controlled. Ilara's breath hitched. She should pull away, should run. This man, this Alpha King, was saying impossible things, looking at her like she mattered, like she was something precious instead of cursed. It was too much, too fast. But her body was failing. The blood loss, the cold, the shock, it was all catching up to her. Her knees buckled, and Kale caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her against his chest as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. "I've got you, and I'm not letting go." Ilara wanted to protest, wanted to demand answers, to understand how this stranger could know her, could claim to have been searching for her. But the warmth of his arms was seeping into her frozen body, and his heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, and for the first time in hours, maybe years, she felt safe. "You're really him," she whispered, as darkness began to pull her under. "The Alpha King." "I'm really him." She felt his lips brush her forehead, gentle and devastating. "And you, Ilara, are really mine. You just don't remember yet." The last thing she felt, before unconsciousness claimed her, was the sensation of moving, of being carried through the forest like something cherished. And the last thing she heard was Kale's voice, low and fierce and promising, "But you will." Chapter 3. Warmth. That was the first thing Ilara registered as consciousness crept back in. Not the biting cold of the forest, not the sharp agony of her wounds, but genuine warmth seeping into her bones like sunlight after an endless winter. She floated in it for a moment, reluctant to surface, reluctant to face whatever reality waited on the other side of waking. But reality had never been kind enough to let her hide for long. Her eyes opened to flickering firelight dancing across stone walls. She was lying on something impossibly soft. Furs, she realized, piled thick beneath her body. The room was carved from rock, ancient and beautiful, with symbols etched into the walls that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. A fire crackled in a hearth big enough to stand in, and the scent of herbs and something else, cedar and winter storm, Kale's scent, wrapped around her like a blanket. She sat up slowly, expecting pain, but found only a dull ache where the wound had been. Her hand went to her side, fingers finding smooth skin beneath clean bandages, healed, or mostly healed. Impossible for injuries that severe, unless you've been asleep for 2 days. Ilara's head snapped toward the voice. Kale stood in the doorway, backlit by torchlight from the corridor beyond, and her breath caught despite everything. He was still devastating in the firelight, all sharp edges and barely leashed power, but there was something different about him here. Something almost careful, like he was trying not to spook a wounded animal. Maybe that's exactly what she was. 2 days, she repeated, her voice hoarse. "I don't understand. The wound was fatal." He moved into the room with that predatory grace, each step deliberate. "You'd lost too much blood. Your wolf was barely present. Any normal Omega would have died before I got you back here." He settled into a chair near the fire, those amber eyes never leaving her face. "But you're not a normal Omega, are you, Ilara?" The silver flames flickered beneath her skin in response, and she pulled the furs tighter around herself. "I don't know what I am." "Liar." The word was soft, not accusatory, almost gentle. "You know. You've always known. You just convinced yourself it was a curse instead of a gift." Ilara's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, wanted to argue, but the memories were already surfacing. Memories she'd spent years trying to bury. She'd been 7 years old when it first happened. Playing in the garden behind her parents' house, the summer sun warm on her face, and she'd been so happy. Her mother had been singing in the kitchen, her father's laugh drifting through the open windows. Everything had been perfect, safe, right. Then the neighbor's dog had gotten loose. A massive thing, all teeth and rage, bred for fighting. It had charged at her, and Ilara had screamed. She'd thrown her hands up, not in defense, but in pure terror, and the flames had erupted from her palms. Silver fire that didn't burn like normal fire. It had wrapped around the dog like living chains, freezing it mid-leap, holding it suspended in the air. Her parents had run outside to find their daughter glowing like a star, power radiating from her in waves, and the dog whimpering in a cage of silver light. Her mother had gone pale. Her father had dropped to his knees. "Morgana," he'd whispered. "She has Morgana's gift." That night, Ilara had hidden under her bed while her parents argued in hushed, frightened voices. "We have to bind it. She's 7 years old, which is why we bind it now, before the other packs find out, before they come for her." Her father's voice had cracked. "You know what they do to silver-blessed children. You know the prophecy." "The prophecy is just a story." "Is it? Look at our daughter. Look at what she just did." A long pause. "If word gets out, they'll either kill her or try to use her. I won't let that happen. I won't lose her." The next morning, they'd taken her to a witch at the edge of their territory, an old woman who'd smelled like sage and death, who'd drawn symbols on Ilara's skin with ash, and whispered words in a language that made her bones ache. The binding ritual had hurt worse than anything she'd ever experienced, like having chains wrapped around her soul, padlocked and buried deep. When it was over, the flames were gone. Her wolf, barely formed, just a whisper of presence, had gone silent, and her parents had held her while she cried, whispering that it was for the best, that she was safe now, that no one would ever hurt her. They'd been wrong. "Your parents meant well," Kale said quietly, pulling her from the memory. He'd moved closer without her noticing, now sitting on the edge of the furs, close enough to touch, but not touching. "They were trying to protect you. You knew them. Not a question." The certainty settled in her chest like a stone. "I knew of them. Your father was Crescent Moon's best tracker before he met your mother. She was from a smaller pack in the south, one that kept the old ways." His gaze was intense, searching. "They loved you enough to cripple you, loved you enough to trap you in a cage and tell you it was freedom." The words stung because they were true. "They died when I was 18. A rogue attack. A convenient rogue attack." Kale's voice went hard. 3 months after your father started asking questions about breaking bindings. 2 weeks after your mother contacted an elder who specialized in ancient bloodlines. Ilara's blood went cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your parents' deaths weren't random violence. I'm saying someone wanted them silenced before they could restore what they'd taken from you." He finally reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with devastating gentleness. "And I'm saying Marcus's father took you in immediately after, didn't he? Gave you a home, told you that you owed him everything." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Marcus's father had been there that night, had found the bodies, had taken her hand and led her away from the carnage, whispering that she was family now, that they'd take care of her. She'd been so grateful, so broken, and lost, and grateful. "He knew," she whispered. "He knew what I was. He knew enough to keep you bound, to make sure you stayed weak." Kale's thumb traced the curve of her jaw, to make sure his son could claim you as mate, without any questions. An Omega was easy to control, but a silver-blessed female with ancient bloodline? That was dangerous. That was a threat to his power. The silver flames surged beneath her skin, responding to her rage. Ilara looked down at her hands, watching the light dance across her palms. All those years, all that time thinking she was worthless, thinking she was lucky Marcus even wanted her, thinking. The rejection broke the binding, she said suddenly, understanding flooding through her. When Marcus severed the mate bond, it shattered whatever was holding my power back. Partially, Kale's hand moved to her wrist, his fingers circling the delicate bones. "You're still fighting it, still trying to push it down because you've been taught your whole life that this part of you is wrong, is dangerous." "It is dangerous." The words came out sharper than intended. "You saw what happened. I can't control it. What if I hurt someone? What if you finally stop apologizing for being powerful?" His voice cut through her panic like a blade. "What if you stop trying to make yourself small to make others comfortable?" He leaned closer, his presence overwhelming in the best and worst way. You want to know what I see when I look at you, Alara? She couldn't speak, could barely breathe. I see a female who survived 18 years of having her soul bound in chains. I see someone who endured a mate bond with a male too weak to deserve her. I see a woman who was beaten, rejected, hunted, and left to die. His voice dropped to something raw, and who still had the strength to keep fighting, still had enough fire left to make grown males run in terror. His forehead touched hers, gentle and devastating. I see exactly what you're supposed to be, what you were always meant to be. And what's that? The question came out broken. Mine. The word hung between them like a vow, like a promise, like something that should have terrified her, but instead felt like coming home to a place she'd never been. You keep saying that, Alara whispered, that you've been searching for me, that you've been waiting, but I don't understand how. I don't understand why you would, because 5 years ago, I felt a bond snap into place. Kale pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, not forced, not manufactured by pack politics or convenient bloodlines, real, the kind the old stories talk about, the kind that happens once in 1,000 years. His hand moved to rest over her heart, and she felt the warmth of it seeping through her skin. I felt you, Alara, felt your soul calling to mine, and then I felt you disappear behind walls so thick I couldn't reach you. Her breath caught. The binding, and the mate bond forced on you by a male who never deserved you in the first place. His jaw tightened. I've spent 5 years tracking every rumor, following every lead, trying to find the female who was supposed to be mine, and every time I got close, the trail went cold, because you didn't know, because they'd made sure you couldn't feel it. Tears burned behind her eyes, all those years of feeling wrong, of feeling like something inside her was missing, of standing beside Marcus, and wondering why it never felt right, why she always felt like she was pretending to be someone she wasn't. But you feel it now, don't you? Kale's voice was barely above a whisper. Now that the binding is broken, now that Marcus's claim is severed, you feel it. And God help her, she did. It was there beneath her ribs, a golden thread connecting her to this impossible male who'd appeared from the darkness, like salvation itself. A pull so strong it made her ache, a recognition so deep it felt carved into her bones. I don't know how to be what you think I am, she admitted, the words cracking. I don't know how to be powerful. I only know how to survive. Then I'll teach you the difference. Kale's smile was slight but genuine, and it transformed his face from devastating to absolutely lethal. But first, you need to rest. Your body is still healing, and tomorrow, he stood moving toward the doorway. Tomorrow we start figuring out exactly what that silver flame of yours can really do. He was leaving, walking away when every cell in her body screamed for him to stay. Alara's hand shot out before she could stop herself, catching his wrist. Kel. He turned back, eyebrow raised in question. Thank you, she said softly, for saving me, for seeing me. His expression gentled, and he brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent heat racing through her veins. I'll always see you, Alara, even when you can't see yourself. Then he was gone, and she was alone with the fire, and her thoughts, and the silver flames still dancing beneath her skin. For the first time in her life, Alara didn't try to push them down. Instead, she let them burn. Chapter 4. Morning came wrapped in mist. Alara woke to find fresh clothes laid out on the chair beside the bed, soft leather pants, a tunic woven from material that seemed to shimmer between silver and white, and boots that looked like they'd been made specifically for her feet. No note, no explanation, just Kale's cedar scent lingering in the air like a promise. She dressed slowly, marveling at how the clothes fit perfectly, how the fabric seemed to hum against her skin, in response to the power still flickering beneath the surface. The silver flames had quieted overnight, but not disappeared. They pulsed gently with each heartbeat, a constant reminder that everything had changed. Kale was waiting in the corridor when she emerged, leaning against the stone wall with his arms crossed. The morning light streaming through high windows caught in his dark hair, and those amber eyes tracked her movement with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "You look better," he said, pushing off the wall. "Not you look good, though." The way his gaze lingered suggested he was thinking it. "The color's back in your face. How do you feel?" "Like I slept for a week, instead of 2 days." She fell into step beside him as he started walking, their footsteps echoing off ancient stone. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere you need to see." He glanced at her sidelong. "Somewhere that might help you understand what you are, what you've always been." They moved through corridors carved from living rock, past torches that burned with flames too steady to be natural, past doorways that opened onto rooms filled with wolves who stopped and stared as she passed. Ilara felt their eyes on her, curious, assessing, some afraid, but none of them looked at her with the contempt she'd grown used to in the Crescent Moon Pack. They looked at her like she mattered. The corridor opened suddenly onto the outside world, and Ilara stopped breathing. They stood on a plateau carved into the mountainside, and spread below them was a valley so beautiful it hurt to look at. Forest stretched in every direction, ancient pines, reaching toward a sky painted in shades of pearl and gold. Mountains ringed the horizon like sleeping giants, their peaks crowned with snow that glittered in the morning light. And in the center of it all, rising from the forest floor like something from a dream, stood ruins. Not broken ruins, not crumbling stones overtaken by moss and time. These ruins thrummed with power. Massive pillars of white stone soared toward the sky, carved with symbols that seemed to shift and change when she tried to focus on them. Arches connected the pillars, creating a structure that was half temple, half something else entirely. And at the very center, surrounded by the pillars like petals around a flower's heart, stood an altar. Even from this distance, Ilara could feel it calling to her. "What is this place?" she whispered. "The lunar sanctum." Kale's voice carried a reverence she hadn't heard from him before. "Built by the first shifters, back when the old magic still ran strong in the world. Before the packs fractured. Before we forgot what we were meant to be." He started down the path, leading toward the valley, and she followed without thinking. "It's been abandoned for 300 years. No one could enter without the ancient blood, without the gift." "The silver flame," Ilara said slowly, understanding blooming in her chest. "The silver flame." Kale glanced back at her, and something fierce and proud blazed in his expression. "2 nights ago, when I brought you here, the sanctum lit up like a star. Every symbol, every stone, they all started glowing the moment we crossed into the valley. The entire pack saw it." Her steps faltered. "I was unconscious." "You were. But your power wasn't." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Do you understand what that means, Ilara? The sanctum has been dark for 3 centuries. Alphas, witches, elders. They've all tried to wake it. All failed. And you did it while bleeding out in my arms. Without even trying." The weight of his words settled over her, like a cloak. I can't be whatever you think I am. I'm not special. I'm not." "Come." He held out his hand, palm up, an invitation not a demand. "Let me show you." She placed her hand in his, and the connection that sparked between them was immediate and overwhelming. The golden thread she'd felt last night blazed brighter, and the silver flames leaped in response, dancing up her arm in patterns that looked almost deliberate, almost like writing. They descended into the valley together, and the closer they got to the sanctum, the stronger the pull became. It sang in her bones, called to something deep inside her that she'd never known existed. The forest seemed to part for them, trees leaning away as if in respect, and the morning mist swirled around their feet like living things. When they finally stepped between the pillars, Ilara gasped. Up close, the carvings weren't just symbols, they were stories, scenes of wolves running beneath impossible moons, females with flames dancing in their palms, standing before gathered packs, battles fought against shadows that had no shape, and everywhere, woven through every image, was the same symbol, a wolf's head crowned with silver fire. "The mark of Morgana," Kale said softly, stopping before one particularly large carving, the first silver blessed, the one who united all the packs under a single banner 3,000 years ago. He traced the symbol with careful fingers. The prophecy says she'll return, that when the packs fracture again, when the old ways are forgotten, and the darkness rises, Morgana will be reborn to restore the balance. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. That's just a story, a myth. Is it? Cale turned to face her, and his expression was grave. 3 centuries ago, the last silver-blessed female died without an heir. The packs immediately started fighting for dominance. Territory wars that lasted decades. Thousands dead. The sanctum went dark, and the old magic started fading from the world. He stepped closer, and then, 25 years ago, you were born. Glowing silver from the moment you took your first breath, according to the midwife who delivered you. My parents never told me that, she whispered. Because they knew what it meant. Knew what the other packs would do if they found out Morgana's heir had finally arrived. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. They bound your power to save your life, but they couldn't change what you are. Who you are. The silver flames surged in response to his words, brighter than they'd ever been. They raced up her arms across her shoulders, wreathing her in light that didn't burn. Alara looked down at herself and saw the flames forming patterns on her skin, the same symbols carved into the pillars around them. I can't be her, she said desperately, even as the power sang through her veins. I can't be some prophesied savior. I'm nobody. I couldn't even keep my own mate. Your mate was a coward who couldn't handle your power. Cale's voice was steel wrapped in silk. And you're not nobody. Look around you, Alara. Really look. She did, and everywhere she looked, the sanctum was responding. The carvings glowed brighter, where her flames touched the air. The altar at the center pulsed with light in time, with her heartbeat. The very ground beneath her feet hummed with energy that felt ancient and new all at once. The sanctum recognizes you, Cale continued. Your power calls to it because it remembers the first time Morgana stood here, remembers her voice, her gift. He pulled her closer, until they were nearly touching. Your bloodline didn't die out, Ilara. It went underground, hid itself, waited for the right moment to resurface. Why now? The question came out broken. Why me? Because the darkness is rising again. His expression turned grim, rogue packs growing stronger. Ancient things waking in the deep forests, the barrier between our world and the shadow realm weakening. He gestured to the carvings showing the shapeless enemies. The same darkness Morgana fought 3,000 years ago. It's coming back, and the world needs someone who can actually control this power. Alara interrupted, pulling away from him. The flames flickered wildly, responding to her agitation. Someone who knows what they're doing. Not a broken Omega who just learned she's not actually an Omega. A few days ago, she walked toward the altar, needing space, needing to breathe. The structure loomed above her, carved from a single piece of white stone that seemed to drink in the sunlight. Symbols covered every inch of its surface, and at its center was a depression shaped like a handprint. You're not broken, Cale said from behind her, his voice carrying across the space between them. You're awakening. There's a difference. Alara's hand hovered over the depression in the altar. Something inside her screamed to touch it, to press her palm against the stone and see what happened. But fear held her back. Fear of what she might find. Fear of what she might become. What if I can't do this? She whispered. What if I'm not strong enough? Then I'll be strong for both of us. Cale appeared at her side, his presence steady and sure. That's what mates do, Alara. They fill in each other's cracks. They catch each other when they fall. His hand covered hers, warm and solid. But first, you have to stop being afraid of your own fire. Their joined hands moved together, pressed against the altar's surface. The world exploded into light. It erupted from the altar like a tidal wave, silver and white and gold all mixed together, spiraling up the pillars and racing across the arches. The carvings blazed so bright, she had to close her eyes. But even behind her eyelids she could see the power moving, dancing, celebrating. The ground shook, the air sang, and through it all she felt something else, something vast, and ancient, and impossibly old waking up. Voices filled her head, not speaking to her, but through her. Generations of silver-blessed females, their memories flowing into her consciousness like water finding cracks in stone. She saw Morgana standing in this exact spot 3,000 years ago, flames wreathing her as she called the packs to unity. Saw dozens of others throughout the centuries, each one adding their power to the legacy, each one burning bright before fading away. And she saw what they'd fought against. The darkness Kale had mentioned, creatures of shadow and malice, things that fed on fear and hatred, that grew strong when the packs turned on each other. They'd been beaten back, locked away, but never truly destroyed. And they were coming back. The vision released her as suddenly as it had taken her, and Alara staggered backward into Kale's arms. He held her steady, murmuring something in a language she didn't understand, and gradually the light faded. The sanctum settled back into its usual glow, the immediate power receding but not disappearing. What? She had to stop and clear her throat. What just happened? The sanctum accepted you. Kale turned her to face him, and his expression was a mixture of awe and something deeper, something that looked like devotion. You're not just carrying Morgana's blood, Ilara. You're carrying her mantle, her purpose. His hand came up to cradle her face. You're the heir she's been waiting for, the one who'll finish what she started. Ilara looked down at her hands. The silver flames had settled into her skin, visible beneath the surface like veins of starlight. They no longer felt foreign or frightening. They felt like coming home. I saw them, she said quietly. The things we'll have to fight. The darkness. I know. I saw what happened to the others, how they burned themselves out trying to hold it back. I know. His grip tightened. But they fought alone, Alara. You won't. You have me. You have my pack. And you have power they could only dream of. He pressed his forehead to hers, the gesture intimate and grounding. We'll face it together. All of it. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe she could be what the prophecy claimed, what the sanctum insisted, what her blood demanded, but doubt still clawed at her chest, whispering that she was just a rejected Omega playing dress-up in Destiny's clothes. As if sensing her thoughts, Kale pulled back enough to look into her eyes. Do you trust me? I don't know you, she answered honestly. Then let me earn it. His smile was slight but genuine, one day at a time, one moment at a time, until you believe what I already know, that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. A sound echoed across the valley. A howl, low and urgent. Kale's head snapped up, his expression instantly sharp and alert. More howls joined the first, layering over each other in a pattern that clearly meant something. What is it? Alara asked, her stomach dropping. Border alarm. He was already moving, pulling her with him back toward the path. Someone's crossed into our territory. Marcus? The name tasted like poison. Worse. Kale's voice went hard as stone. Much worse. Chapter 5. They ran. Not the desperate, wounded flight Ilara had made through the Vale Woods 3 nights ago, but something faster, more controlled. Kale moved like liquid shadow beside her, his power radiating outward in waves that made the forest itself seem to bow. And Ilara, she kept pace with him easily, the silver flames lending her speed and strength she'd never possessed before. The power felt different now, less like something foreign trying to claw its way out, and more like an extension of herself, like muscles she'd never known she had, finally waking up and stretching after years of forced sleep. They crested a ridge, and Ilara saw what had triggered the alarm. The border was marked by ancient stones, each one carved with territorial symbols that glowed faintly in the afternoon light. And standing just inside Kale's territory, flanked by at least 20 wolves in human form, was a man who radiated authority and barely contained violence. He was tall, not quite as tall as Kale, with silver threading through dark hair and scars, crossing his face like a roadmap of battles won. His eyes, pale blue and cold as winter, locked onto her the moment she appeared, and his lip curled in something between a smile and a sneer. "So it's true," he said, his voice carrying easily across the distance. The Alpha King found himself a pet Omega. Kale's growl was low and lethal. "You're trespassing, Ronan." "Am I?" The man Ronan spread his hands in mock innocence. "I was under the impression that the old laws allowed alphas to pursue escaped criminals across borders. Or have those laws changed since you crowned yourself king?" "Alara is not a criminal." "No?" Ronan took a step forward, and his wolves moved with him like a coordinated unit. "Then perhaps she can explain why the Crescent Moon Pack has filed a formal complaint, why Marcus Thornwell claims his mate was stolen from their territory by force, why they're demanding her return for trial." Ice flooded Alara's veins. "That's a lie. He rejected me." The bond was never properly severed," Ronan interrupted, his cold eyes boring into her. "According to Marcus, you fled before the ritual could be completed, which means you're still bound to him under pack law. Still his to command." He smiled, all teeth and cruelty, "still his property to retrieve." The silver flames exploded beneath Alara's skin, bright enough that several of Ronan's wolves stumbled backward. "I am no one's property." "Easy," Kale murmured beside her, his hand finding her elbow. The touch was grounding, centering, but she could feel the fury rolling off him in waves. "He's baiting you. And it's working beautifully," Ronan observed. "Tell me, little Omega, does the Alpha King know what you really are? Does he know about the fire that burns in your veins? The curse that got your parents killed?" Alara went very still. "What did you say?" "Oh, did no one tell you?" Ronan's smile widened. "I was there that night. One of the rogues who attacked your family's home. We were hired, you see. Paid very well to make sure your parents never had the chance to break your binding." He tilted his head, studying her like a particularly interesting insect. "They fought well. Your father almost took my eye before I ripped out his throat. And your mother, such a fighter. She lasted almost 10 minutes before she finally stopped screaming." The world went red. Alara didn't remember moving, didn't remember making the decision to attack. One moment she was standing beside Kale, and the next she was airborne, silver flames wreathing her entire body, as she launched herself at Ronan, with a feral snarl that belonged more to her wolf than her human form. She got 3 feet before Cal caught her around the waist, hauling her back against his chest. "Don't," he growled in her ear. "That's exactly what he wants. He's trying to provoke you into attacking first, so he can claim self-defense." "He killed them," Alara choked out, fighting against Kale's hold even though she knew he was right. "He murdered my parents. He's standing there smiling about it, and you want me to—" "I want you to be smart." Kale's grip tightened. "He brought 20 wolves, Alara, 20 trained fighters against a king and a female who just discovered her power 3 days ago. The math doesn't work." His voice dropped lower, meant only for her. "But I promise you, he will pay. They all will. Just not today. Not like this." Ronan laughed, the sound echoing across the clearing. "How sweet. The king plays protector. Tell me, Kale, does she know what you really want from her? Does she know about the alliance you're trying to build? The prophecy you're so desperate to fulfill?" "Careful, Ronan." Kale's voice went deadly quiet. "You're seconds away from starting a war you can't win." "A war?" Ronan looked around at his wolves, then back at Kale with exaggerated confusion. "I'm simply here to collect Marcus's escaped mate and deliver her for trial. That's not war. That's law." He paused, letting the words hang. "Unless, of course, you're refusing to honor the old laws. In which case, I'll have to inform the Council of Alphas that the great Alpha King believes himself above the rules that bind the rest of us." It was a trap. Alara could see it clearly now. If Cal handed her over, she'd be returned to Marcus and likely killed before anyone could intervene. But if Cal refused, Ronan would have grounds to challenge his authority in front of the entire council, would have ammunition to turn the other alphas against him. She'd be the spark that ignited a war. There's a third option, Alara said suddenly, her voice surprisingly steady, despite the rage still burning through her veins. She pulled free of Kale's hold and stepped forward. I invoke the right of challenge. The clearing went absolutely silent. Ronan's smile faltered for the first time. You can't. Can't I? Alara lifted her chin, channeling every ounce of authority she'd felt at the sanctum, every whisper of power from the females who'd come before her. I'm accused of breaking pack law by fleeing an incomplete bond. Fine. Then let Marcus come here and prove his claim. Let him stand before witnesses and demonstrate that the bond still exists. She let the silver flames dance visibly along her arms, and if he can't, then his complaint is void, and this matter is settled. Ronan's face darkened. The Omega doesn't get to make demands. She's not an Omega. Kale's voice cracked like a whip, and his power flooded the clearing, making every wolf present drop their eyes in submission. Every wolf except Ronan. She's silver-blessed. She's accepted by the lunar sanctum, and she's under my protection as my... He paused, the word hanging heavy, mate. The silence that followed was deafening. Alara's heart stopped. He'd just claimed her. Publicly. In front of witnesses from another pack. That wasn't something done lightly. That was a declaration that would spread through every territory within days. That was. Your mate, Ronan repeated slowly, his cold eyes gleaming with something dangerous. How convenient. The Alpha King just happens to claim the very female he's accused of stealing, almost like you planned this whole thing. I claimed her because she's mine. Kale moved to stand beside Alara, his presence solid and unwavering. The bond exists. It's real. And it supersedes any false claim Marcus might make. He met Ronan's gaze without flinching. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your wolves and leave my territory. You're going to tell Marcus that if he wants to press his claim, he can present it to the Council of Alphas at the next gathering. And you're going to remember that the next time you cross my borders uninvited, I won't be nearly so hospitable. For a long moment, Ronan didn't move. His wolves shifted nervously behind him, clearly aware they were outmatched despite their numbers. The Alpha King's power was legendary. Challenging him directly would be suicide. But Ronan wasn't quite ready to back down. The council will hear about this, he said finally. They'll hear how you sheltered a rogue female, how you claimed a mate who's already bonded to another Alpha's son, how you're using ancient prophecies to justify breaking modern law. His smile returned, sharp and cruel. You think you're untouchable, Kale. You think your power makes you immune to consequences. But power without legitimacy is just tyranny, and tyrants eventually fall. Is that a threat? It's a prediction. Ronan turned to leave, his wolves falling into formation around him, but he paused at the border stones, looking back over his shoulder. Oh, and little Omega, your parents died screaming your name, begging for your life even as I tore them apart. I thought you should know that. I thought you should understand exactly what your existence cost them. The silver flames erupted. Alara screamed, and the power that had been simmering beneath her skin exploded outward in a wave of pure force. It hit Ronan's retreating form like a physical blow, sending him stumbling forward. The border stones lit up, blazing with the same symbols from the sanctum, and the very ground between them split apart with a sound like thunder. A wall of silver fire erupted from the crack, rising 20 feet high, blocking Ronan and his wolves from view. It burned without heat, without consuming anything, but the message was clear. Cross this line again, and you won't walk away. Alara stood at the center of the inferno, her entire body wreathed in flames, her eyes glowing with power she'd never touched before. The rage, the grief, the years of suppressed fury, it all poured out of her in one brilliant, devastating display. And then Kale's arms were around her, his voice in her ear, grounding her before the power could consume her completely. That's enough, he murmured. You've made your point. Let it go, Alara. Come back to me. It took effort, more than she wanted to admit, but gradually the flames receded, The wall of fire sank back into the earth. The ground sealed itself, and the border stones dimmed to their usual glow. When her vision cleared, Ronan and his wolves were gone, fled like shadows before dawn. Alara's legs gave out, but Kale caught her before she hit the ground. "I've got you," he said softly. "I've got you." "He killed them," she whispered against his chest, her voice broken. "He murdered my parents, and he was smiling about it." "I know." Kale's hand stroked her hair, the gesture surprisingly gentle from someone so dangerous, "and he will pay for it. I swear to you, Alara, he will pay for every moment of pain he caused you, every life he stole, every smile he gave while describing your parents' deaths." His voice went hard. "But we have to be smart. We have to be strategic." "I don't want to be strategic," she choked out. "I want him dead." "He will be. Just not today." Kale pulled back enough to look at her face, his amber eyes blazing with something fierce and protective. "Today, you showed them what you're capable of. You made every wolf in that clearing think twice about underestimating you. You proved that you're not some helpless omega they can push around." His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "You were magnificent. I lost control." "No, you took control." He smiled slightly. "There's a difference." Other wolves were appearing now. Kale's pack, drawn by the display of power, they emerged from the forest like ghosts. Dozens of them, and every single one dropped to one knee when they saw Alara, not in submission, in respect. "Rise," Kale commanded, and they obeyed instantly. "Spread the word. The female under my protection is not to be touched, not to be threatened, not to be questioned." His voice carried across the assembled wolves with absolute authority. "She is my mate, she is silver-blessed, and she is pack." "She is pack," they echoed, the words rolling through the crowd like a wave. Alara stared at them, at these wolves she didn't know who were pledging their loyalty to her, and something inside her chest cracked open. For so long she'd been nothing, had been told she was nothing, had believed she was nothing. But standing here, wrapped in Kale's arms, with his pack kneeling before her, and the silver flames still humming beneath her skin, she felt like something more. She felt like she might actually be enough. "Come," Kale said softly, helping her to her feet. "We need to get you back to the den. You've used a lot of power today, and you need to rest." "The council," Alara said, her mind already racing ahead. "Ronan's going to tell them everything. They'll hear my side of the story too." Kale's expression hardened. "And they'll see you for themselves at the gathering. They'll see what you can do, what you are." He cupped her face in both hands. "Let them come, Alara. Let them question. Let them doubt. You'll prove them all wrong." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that her power would be enough, that the prophecy would protect her, that being Kale's mate would shield her from the consequences of everything she'd just done. But deep in her gut, she knew the truth. The war had just begun, and before it was over, she'd either rise to meet her destiny or burn trying. Chapter 6. Night fell like a curtain over the mountains. Alara sat on the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley, her legs dangling over open air, and watched the last traces of sunlight bleed from the sky. The silver flames had finally quieted after hours of restless pulsing, leaving her exhausted, in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness. Her soul felt wrung out, hollowed, like she'd poured too much of herself into that wall of fire, and didn't know how to refill the empty spaces left behind. She heard him before she saw him. Cal moved through the darkness like he belonged to it, his footsteps barely audible on the stone. He didn't speak when he reached her, just settled beside her on the cliff's edge, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and stared out at the emerging stars. They sat in silence for a long time. It should have been awkward. Two people who barely knew each other, bound by prophecy and circumstance, and a connection neither of them fully understood. But instead it felt comfortable, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. "You didn't eat dinner," Kale said finally, his voice low and careful. "Wasn't hungry." You need to keep your strength up, using that much power. I know. Alara pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. I can't stop thinking about what he said, about my parents, about how they died because of me. They died because of him. The words came out sharp, edged with barely contained fury, because of greed and fear, and people who kill anything they don't understand. Don't you dare take that guilt on yourself. But if I hadn't been born with this power, she gestured vaguely at her hands, where the silver flames still flickered faintly beneath the skin. They'd still be alive. They'd be safe. They wouldn't have spent their last moments terrified and in pain, calling out for a daughter who couldn't save them. Cale was quiet for a moment. Then he stood, shrugging out of the heavy cloak he wore, and draped it around her shoulders. The fabric still held his warmth, his scent, cedar and winter storm, and something uniquely him. Come with me, he said, offering his hand. There's something you need to see. Alara looked up at him, this impossible alpha king with his burning eyes and his gentle hands, and felt something shift in her chest. Trust didn't come easily to her. Years with Marcus had taught her that trust was just another weapon people used to hurt you. But Cale, he'd given her nothing but honesty since the moment he'd appeared in that forest, had offered her protection, acceptance, even claimed her publicly despite barely knowing her. She took his hand. He led her deeper into the mountain, through corridors she hadn't seen before, past chambers that opened onto underground springs and caverns lit by bioluminescent moss. The pack's den was far more extensive than she'd realized, a city carved into living rock, ancient and beautiful and thrumming with quiet life. They descended a spiral staircase that seemed to go on forever, the air growing warmer with each step. Finally, they emerged into a chamber that stole Alara's breath. It was a natural hot spring, fed by volcanic heat, deep beneath the mountain. Steam rose from the water's surface, like spirits dancing, and crystals embedded in the walls caught the light from scattered torches, throwing rainbow patterns across the stone. But what captured her attention were the carvings. Every inch of wall space was covered in them, stories etched in stone, histories preserved across millennia. This is the Hall of Remembrance, Cal said softly, his voice echoing in the enclosed space. Every silver-blessed female who ever lived, their stories are here, their victories, their struggles. He moved to one section of wall, running his fingers over a particularly intricate carving, their sacrifices. Alara approached slowly, her eyes scanning the images. She saw females wreathed in flames, standing before armies, saw them healing the wounded, mending rifts between warring packs, saw them falling in battle, their light extinguishing even as they protected others. Morgana isn't the only one who gave everything, Cale continued. There have been dozens throughout history. Some lived long lives, others burned bright and brief. But every single one of them carried the same burden you do now, the same power, the same destiny. He turned to look at her, and every single one of them had people who died because they existed. Parents, siblings, mates, children. The words landed like blows. That's supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to make you understand that you're not alone in this. He crossed to her, his expression intense. Your parents' deaths weren't your fault, Alara. They were the cost of something greater, something that's been playing out for thousands of years. The darkness fears the silver-blessed, because you're the only thing that can truly destroy it. So it comes for you early. It tries to extinguish your light, before you're strong enough to fight back. His hand came up to cup her face. Your parents knew that risk. They chose to have you anyway, chose to protect you anyway, because they believed you were worth it. Tears blurred her vision. How do you know all this? Because it's written here. He gestured to the walls. Because the same story repeats over and over. And because, he paused, something vulnerable flashing across his face. Because I lost someone too. Someone who died protecting me from the very darkness we're about to face. Alara's breath caught. In all their conversations, Cale had never mentioned his past, had never revealed anything about his own wounds. My sister. The words came out rough, scraped raw. Liana. She was silver-blessed too, Though her gift was different from yours, she could see things, futures, possibilities, and she saw, his jaw clenched. She saw the darkness rising, saw what it would do if someone didn't stop it. So she went to face it alone, despite my protests, despite begging her to wait for me. His eyes squeezed shut. I found her body 3 days later. What was left of it? Kale. Alara's hand found his without thinking, fingers threading through his. She was 19. His voice cracked, barely grown, and she died knowing I'd blame myself, knowing I'd carry that guilt for the rest of my life. He opened his eyes, and the pain in them was devastating. So when I tell you that your parents' deaths aren't your fault, I'm also telling myself that Liana's death isn't mine, that we can't control the darkness, can't stop it from taking people we love. All we can do is make sure their deaths meant something, make sure we finish what they started. The vulnerability in his confession cracked something open inside her. This wasn't just an alpha king dispensing wisdom. This was a male who understood her pain because he carried his own, who knew what it felt like to lose everything and still have to keep fighting. "Is that why you've been searching for me?" she asked softly. "Because of your sister? Because of what she saw?" Partially. Kale's thumb traced circles on her palm. The day Liana died, she made me promise something, made me swear that when the next Silver Blessed appeared, I'd protect her, train her, help her become what she was meant to be. He pulled Alara closer, until only inches separated them. But then I felt you, felt that bond snap into place 5 years ago, and I realized it was more than obligation, more than a promise to my dead sister. His forehead touched hers. "You're mine, Alara, not because of prophecy or destiny, or some ancient obligation, but because my soul recognized yours, because everything in me knows that I was made to stand beside you." Her breath hitched. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." His hands moved to frame her face, tilting it up so she had no choice but to meet his burning gaze. "I know you're stronger than you believe. I know you're brave enough to face down wolves who should terrify you. I know you have a fire inside you that could burn down the world, but you're more afraid of hurting people than you are of dying." His voice dropped to something raw and honest. "I know that when I look at you, I see my future, and when you look at me." He paused. "What do you see?" Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. What did she see? She saw someone dangerous and powerful who could crush her without breaking a sweat. But she also saw someone who'd carried her bleeding body through the forest, who'd defended her against Ronan, who'd stood before his pack and claimed her as his own, consequences be damned. She saw someone who looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. "I see someone I want to trust," she admitted. "Someone I'm terrified to trust. Because of Marcus." Not a question. Because of everyone. The words spilled out before she could stop them. "Marcus told me I was lucky he wanted me, that no one else would. My pack made me feel like a burden, like something to be tolerated at best. And then you appear, claiming we're fated mates, saying all these things that sound too good to be true." Her voice broke. "What if you're wrong? What if this bond you feel is just desperation? What if I'm not actually what you need? Then we figure it out together." Kale's response was immediate, unwavering. "But Alara, I'm not wrong." He pressed her hand against his chest, right over his heart. "This isn't desperation. It's certainty. It's the most sure I've ever been about anything in my life." The silver flames pulsed between them, drawn to his touch like moths to light. Alara could feel his heartbeat beneath her palm, strong and steady and real, could feel the golden thread connecting them, pulling taut, trying to draw them even closer together. "I'm scared," she whispered, "of the prophecy, of the council, of Ronan and Marcus, and all the people who want me dead. But mostly," her eyes met his, "I'm scared of how much I already need you. It's been 3 days, Kale. 3 days and you're already under my skin. Already essential. How is that possible?" "Because we were always meant to find each other." His thumb brushed across her lower lip, the touch sending heat spiraling through her. "Because the bond doesn't care about logic or timelines. It just knows." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. "Do you trust me, Alara? Even just a little?" She should say no, should protect herself, should remember that trust had only ever led to pain. But looking into Cale's amber eyes, feeling the warmth of him surrounding her, sensing the absolute conviction in every word he spoke, she couldn't lie. "Yes," she breathed. "I trust you." His smile was devastating. "Then let me show you something." He stepped back, releasing her, and began unbuttoning his shirt. Alara's eyes widened, heat flooding her face, but he just chuckled. "Not like that. Not yet." He shrugged out of the shirt, and in the torchlight, she saw what he'd been hiding beneath the fabric. Scars. Dozens of them, crisscrossing his chest and back like a roadmap of violence. Some were clean lines, blade work. Others were jagged tears, claws and teeth, and across his ribs, burned into the skin itself, was a symbol she recognized from the sanctum, the mark of Morgana. "I had this done 5 years ago," Cale said quietly, running his fingers over the brand. "The day I felt you through the bond, the day I knew what I was searching for." He looked up at her. "Every alpha who sees this knows what it means, knows I'm bound to the prophecy. To you, it's made me enemies, cost me alliances, almost got me killed twice." His voice went soft. "But I'd do it again in a heartbeat, because you're worth every scar, every fight, every sacrifice." Alara couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the enormity of what he was saying. 5 years. He'd been carrying this mark for 5 years, declaring his loyalty to a female he'd never met, weathering consequences she couldn't imagine. For her, Cale. She reached out, her fingers hovering over the brand. "Why? Why would you do this?" "Because when you know, you know." He caught her hand, pressing it flat against the mark. "And I've known since the moment our souls touched that there was nowhere else I was supposed to be, no one else I was meant to protect, no one else worth building a kingdom for." His other hand tangled in her hair, tilting her head back. "You asked me what I want from you. This is it. I want your trust, your honesty, your fire." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I want every broken piece of you, so I can help put them back together, and I want to give you every part of me in return." The distance between them had vanished. Alara could feel his breath on her lips, could see the way his eyes had darkened, with something that made her entire body sing. This was it, the moment where everything changed, where she either stepped back into safety, or stepped forward into something terrifying and magnificent. She chose magnificence. Rising on her toes, she closed the final inches between them and pressed her lips to his. The kiss started gentle, a question, an offering, but the moment their mouths met, something ignited. The golden thread binding them together blazed like sunlight, and the silver flames erupted across her skin in patterns of pure joy. Cale's arms came around her, pulling her against him, and he kissed her like she was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. It was nothing like kissing Marcus, that had always felt performative, obligatory, like going through motions she was supposed to feel but never quite did. This felt like coming home. Cale kissed her like he was memorizing her, like she was precious and essential, and the only thing in the world that mattered. His hands moved across her back, one tangling in her hair while the other pressed against her spine, holding her close. And Alara, she let herself fall into it, let herself stop overthinking, and just feel. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she saw that his eyes had shifted, no longer just amber, but threaded through with silver. His wolf, she realized, rising to the surface in response to hers. "I see you," Cale whispered against her lips. "All of you, Alara. The power and the fear, the strength and the vulnerability, the girl who was hurt and the woman rising from the ashes." He kissed her again, softer this time. "And I'm not going anywhere." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but for the first time in years, they weren't born from pain. They were relief, gratitude, the overwhelming sensation of being truly seen by someone who chose to stay anyway. "I see you too," she said, her hands framing his face, "and I'm done running." His smile could have lit the world. Good. Because we have a war to win, a prophecy to fulfill, and about 100 alphas to prove wrong. He pressed his forehead to hers. And we're going to do it together. Above them, carved in ancient stone, the silver-blessed females of history watched in eternal silence. And if Alara looked close enough, she'd swear they were smiling. Chapter 7. 3 weeks passed like a dream wrapped in fire. Alara trained every morning in the clearing beyond the den, learning to call the silver flames at will instead of letting them control her. Kale was patient, relentless, pushing her past what she thought she could do until the power flowed through her like breathing. She learned to shape it, to direct it, to use it for more than just destruction. She could heal minor wounds now, could sense other shifters' emotions through the flame's connection to life itself. She was becoming what the prophecy claimed she was meant to be. And at night, she and Kale would sit on that cliff overlooking the valley, talking until the stars faded. He told her about building his alliance, about the years spent bringing fractured packs under one banner. She told him about her childhood, about the binding and the loneliness, and all the ways Marcus had made her feel small. They shared their scars, their fears, their dreams of what might come after the darkness was defeated. They hadn't kissed again since that night in the Hall of Remembrance, though the tension between them built like a gathering storm. Every accidental touch felt electric. Every shared glance lasted too long. But Kale seemed determined to let her set the pace, to give her the control Marcus had always stolen. It made her fall harder for him, every single day. The council summons arrived on the 22nd day. Alara was sparring with one of Kale's wolves, a female named Sarah, who'd been teaching her hand-to-hand combat, when the messenger appeared. A young male, barely out of his teens, who dropped to one knee before Kale, with a scroll clutched in trembling hands. "Alpha King," he panted, "the Council of Alphas has convened. They demand your presence at the gathering grounds in 3 days' time." His eyes flicked nervously to Alara. "And they demand she come too, to answer for the charges brought against her." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Kale took the scroll, his expression unreadable as he broke the seal and scanned the contents. But Alara saw the muscle jumping in his jaw, saw the way his knuckles went white against the parchment. "What charges?" she asked, though dread already curled in her stomach. "Abandonment of mate bond, trespassing on sovereign territory, unauthorized use of ancient magic." Kale's voice was flat, controlled, but fury simmered beneath every word, and conspiracy to undermine the council's authority by claiming false prophecy. He looked up, and his eyes blazed. "Ronan's been busy." Sarah cursed under her breath. "They can't actually believe. They're scared." Kale crumpled the scroll in his fist, a silver-blessed female appearing after 3 centuries. "It threatens the power structure they've built, threatens their authority, so they'll use any excuse to discredit her, to make her seem dangerous instead of divine." "Can we refuse?" Alara's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Just not go? If we refuse, they'll declare us rogue, outlaw the entire Shadow Peak pack, and authorize every alpha in the Alliance to hunt us." Cal's expression was grim. "We'd be at war within days, and not just with 1 or 2 packs, with all of them." The weight of it settled over Alara like a shroud. This was her fault. Her existence was about to destroy everything Kale had built, tear apart the alliance he'd spent years forging. She opened her mouth to say she'd go alone, that he didn't have to risk everything for her, but he spoke first. "We go together." His tone left no room for argument. "We face the council. We prove your power is real, your claim legitimate, and we make them understand that you're not a threat. You're their salvation." He moved to her, his hands settling on her shoulders. "And we do it without showing fear, without apologizing for what you are. We walk in there like the king and queen we're meant to be." "Queen." The word sent a thrill through her that she tried desperately to ignore. "Kale, if this goes wrong." "It won't." His certainty should have been reassuring, but something in his eyes told her he was more worried than he was letting on. "Trust me." She did. God help her. She did. The gathering grounds lay at the heart of neutral territory, a massive stone amphitheater built by the first shifters to host interpack disputes. It could hold thousands, and as Alara and Kale approached with a contingent of Shadow Peak wolves, she saw it was nearly full. Every major pack had sent representatives. Alphas sat in the highest tier, their betas and enforcers filling the rows below. The air hummed with power, dozens of dominants in one place, each radiating their own territorial authority. It should have been chaos, but centuries of protocol kept them separated, kept the violence from erupting into open warfare. For now, Marcus was there. Alara spotted him immediately, sitting beside his father in the Crescent Moon section. He looked different than she remembered, harder, colder, with a cruel set to his mouth that maybe had always been there, but she'd been too blind to see. When his eyes found her, something dark and possessive flickered across his face. And beside the Crescent Moon contingent sat Ronan, his scarred face twisted into a smile that promised violence. "Steady," Kale murmured as they descended the central stairs to the floor of the amphitheater. His hand found the small of her back, the touch grounding. "Remember who you are. Remember what you've become." They reached the center, and the presiding alpha, an ancient male named Cyrus, who'd been leading council sessions for 50 years, rose from his seat. His voice, amplified by the amphitheater's acoustics, rang out across the assembled crowd. "Kale Blackthorn, Alpha King of Shadow Peak, and Lord of the Northern Alliance. You stand accused of harboring a fugitive, violating mate bond law, and making false claims regarding ancient prophecy." His cold gaze shifted to Alara. "And you, Alara Thorn, stand accused of abandoning your rightful mate, trespassing on foreign territory, and practicing forbidden magic without council oversight. She's also accused of being too powerful for you to control," Kale said smoothly, his voice carrying easily. "Which is the real reason we're here, isn't it, Cyrus?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several alphas shifted uncomfortably. Cyrus's eyes narrowed. "You overstep, Blackthorn." "Do I? Then let's address these charges properly." Kale's hand moved from Alara's back to her hand, fingers threading through hers in a public display of unity. The mate bond Alara supposedly abandoned was forced, created through pack politics and obligation, not fate. Marcus Thornwell rejected her publicly, severing whatever claim he might have had. He paused, letting that sink in. "As for trespassing, she fled into my territory, seeking sanctuary from wolves who'd beaten her and left her to die. The law allows for asylum in cases of persecution." "The law allows for asylum when requested through proper channels," Cyrus countered. "Not when a female simply runs across borders without authorization." She was dying. Kale's voice went hard. "Would you have her stop and file paperwork while bleeding out?" Before Cyrus could respond, Marcus shot to his feet. "She's mine," he snarled, the words echoing across the amphitheater. "The rejection was never finalized. The bond still exists. She fled before the ritual could be completed, which means she's still bound to me by law." Alara felt Kale tense beside her, felt his power surge in response to the challenge, but before he could speak, she stepped forward. "Show me," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the stunned silence. "If the bond still exists, prove it. Call to it. Make me feel it." She spread her arms, the silver flames already beginning to dance beneath her skin. "Because I feel nothing when I look at you, Marcus. Nothing but relief, that I'm finally free." Marcus's face contorted with rage. "You don't get to decide when you're free. You're an Omega. I'm not an Omega." The words cracked like thunder, and power flooded the amphitheater. The silver flames erupted from Alara's skin, wreathing her in light that made half the assembled wolves shield their eyes. "I never was. You just needed me to believe I was so you could control me. So you could keep me small and afraid and grateful for scraps of affection." The flames danced higher, and the symbols from the sanctum began appearing in the air around her, ancient writing that pulsed with their own inner light. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Several alphas rose from their seats, their expressions a mixture of awe and fear. "This is what I am," Alara continued, her voice resonating with power that came from somewhere beyond herself. The voices of the silver blessed who'd come before, perhaps, lending her their strength. "This is what you tried to bury, what your father paid to have killed before it could awaken." Her gaze locked on Marcus. "So no, the bond doesn't exist. It never did, because you can't bond with something you don't recognize as equal." "Enough." Cyrus's voice cut through the moment. "These displays of power prove nothing except that you're dangerous, unstable. Exactly what we feared when the prophecy spoke of Morgana's return." A new voice entered the fray, old and creaking but carrying undeniable authority. Every head turned. An ancient female emerged from the shadows at the amphitheater's edge. She was hunched with age, her hair white as snow, but her eyes, they burned with the same silver fire as Alara's. She walked with a staff carved from bone, and the crowd parted before her like water before a ship's prow. "Grandmother," Cyrus breathed, and Alara heard genuine shock in his voice. "Oh, hush, boy. I'm not dead yet, though you've clearly been hoping." The old woman, Cyrus's grandmother, apparently cackled as she shuffled toward the center of the amphitheater. When she reached Alara, she stopped and studied her with those burning eyes. Well, took you long enough to wake up, child." Alara didn't know what to say. "I don't understand." "No, I don't imagine you do. They've done a thorough job of making you forget." The old woman reached out, her gnarled fingers touching Alara's face with surprising gentleness. "But I remember. I was there the night you were born, saw the silver fire dance across your mother's skin as she brought you into the world, saw the mark appear on your shoulder blade." Alara's heart stopped. "What mark?" "The one they burned away when they bound your power." The old woman's expression turned sad. "The one that named you for what you are. Morgana reborn, the Silver Queen." The amphitheater exploded into chaos. Alphas shouted over each other. Wolves shifted nervously. And through it all, Alara stood frozen, her mind reeling. A mark. They'd burned a mark from her skin, evidence of who she was, destroyed before she was old enough to understand what it meant. "This is madness." Ronan's voice cut through the noise. "You expect us to believe some convenient prophecy based on an old woman's ramblings? The girl is powerful. I'll grant you that. But she's not." "I am." Alara's voice was quiet, but something in it made every wolf in the amphitheater fall silent. She turned slowly, taking in all the assembled faces. "I am what the prophecy foretold. I am silver blessed. I am Morgana's heir, and I am done apologizing for it." She looked at Cyrus. "You want proof? Fine, test me, put me through whatever trials you want. But stop pretending this is about law or protocol or protecting the packs." Her flames blazed brighter. "You're afraid of what it means that I exist, afraid of the changes I represent, afraid that the comfortable power structure you've built is about to come crashing down." "And you should be," Kale added, his voice deadly calm. "Because the darkness is rising, whether you accept it or not. The old enemies are waking, and when they come, and they will come, you'll need her, you'll need what she can do. What only she can do." He moved to stand beside Alara, presenting a unified front. "So you can accept her now, or you can keep fighting her, and doom us all." For a long moment, silence reigned. Then Marcus's father stood, his face twisted with malice. "I have evidence," he announced, "that this female's parents weren't killed by rogues, that they were executed by council order for practicing forbidden magic, for trying to break a lawful binding, for loving their daughter more than they feared you." The old woman's voice cracked like a whip. "Oh yes, Garrett, I know what you did. Know the assassins you hired. Know the lies you told to cover it up." She turned to face him fully. "And I know why. Because you discovered what Alara was. Discovered that if she came into her power, she'd be strong enough to challenge your authority, to expose all the corrupt, twisted things you've done to maintain your grip on the Crescent Moon Pack." Garrett's face went white. "You have no proof." "Don't I?" The old woman smiled, and it was terrifying. I've been collecting proof for 18 years, boy. Waiting for the right moment to use it. Waiting for her, she gestured to Alara, to be strong enough to hear the truth without breaking. The amphitheater had gone deathly quiet. Every eye was locked on Garrett, watching him squirm. This is a setup, he finally spat. A conspiracy to undermine. It's the truth. The old woman's voice rang with finality. And you know it. Everyone here knows it. She turned to address the council. The girl's parents were murdered on this male's orders. The binding was done to hide her from people who would use her. And every single law she's accused of breaking was broken first by those who should have protected her. Cyrus looked like he'd aged a decade in the last 5 minutes. If what you say is true, Mother. It is true. And you know what has to happen next. The old woman's gaze swept across the assembled alphas. A challenge must be issued. Justice must be served. And the council must decide, do we embrace what she represents, or do we cling to our fear and let the darkness take us all? Before anyone could respond, Marcus did something unforgivable. He shifted. In the middle of the amphitheater, surrounded by witnesses, and bound by sacred law that forbade violence during council sessions, he let his wolf take over. It was a massive beast, all black fur and gleaming teeth, and it launched itself directly at Alara with a snarl that promised death. Kale moved to intercept, but he wasn't fast enough. Marcus's jaws closed around Alara's throat, and the world exploded into silver fire. Chapter 8. Pain didn't come. Alara felt Marcus's teeth pierce skin, felt the pressure of his jaws locked around her throat. But instead of agony, there was only rage. Pure, incandescent fury that ignited every cell in her body and set the world ablaze. The silver flames didn't just erupt, they detonated. A shockwave of pure power exploded outward from Alara's body, lifting Marcus off his feet and hurling him across the amphitheater like a rag doll. He slammed into the stone wall with enough force to crack the ancient rock, his wolf form crumpling to the ground in a heap of broken bones and singed fur. But Alara wasn't done. She rose into the air, lifted by the flames now wreathing her entire body in brilliant, blinding light. The wound on her throat sealed itself, flesh knitting back together, as if it had never been torn. And as she hung suspended above the amphitheater floor, power radiating from her in waves that made every wolf present drop to their knees, she finally understood. This was what she was meant to be. Not small, not afraid, not apologizing for taking up space in a world that had tried so hard to erase her. You want to see what I am? Her voice resonated with power, echoing off stone and sky, carrying the weight of 3,000 years of history. Let me show you. She raised her hands, and the symbols from the sanctum appeared in the air around her, dozens of them, hundreds, spinning and dancing in patterns that told the story of every silver-blessed female who'd ever lived. The amphitheater itself began to glow, ancient wards built into its foundation awakening for the first time in centuries. The assembled wolves stared in awe and terror. Some wept, some prayed, and some, like Garrett and Ronan, looked ready to bolt. The prophecy speaks of Morgana's return, Alara continued, her gaze sweeping across the crowd, of a female born in fire, who would rise when the darkness threatened to consume us all, who would unite the fractured packs, and restore the balance between our world and the shadow realm. She lowered herself slowly to the ground, flames still dancing across her skin. I didn't ask for this, didn't want it, spent my entire life trying to be small enough that no one would notice me, weak enough that no one would fear me. Marcus groaned from where he lay broken against the wall. His wolf form shimmered, shifting back to human, and Alara saw the burns covering his chest, the way his arm bent at an unnatural angle. He'd live, but he'd never forget what it cost to attack her. But being small didn't keep me safe, she said, her voice dropping to something raw and honest. It just made me easier to hurt, easier to control, easier to use. Her eyes found Garrett in the crowd. And you, all of you who knew what I was, who helped hide it, who profited from keeping me ignorant, you're just as guilty as the ones who tried to kill me. The girl speaks truth. The old woman's voice carried clearly despite her age. For too long, We've allowed fear to dictate our choices. Fear of the old magic. Fear of females with power. Fear of change itself. She thumped her staff against the stone. But the darkness doesn't care about our fears. It's coming whether we're ready or not. And when it arrives, she pointed at Alara with a gnarled finger. She will be our only hope. Or our doom. Ronan's voice cut through the moment like a blade. He stood now, his cold eyes fixed on Alara with calculating intensity. Power like that is dangerous. Unstable. How do we know she won't turn it against us? How do we know this isn't exactly what the darkness wants? For us to embrace something that will destroy us from within. Murmurs of agreement rippled through some sections of the crowd. Alara felt them. The fear, the doubt, the wolves who saw her as a threat rather than salvation. And part of her understood. She'd been afraid of herself for so long, terrified of what the flames might do if she lost control. But standing here, with power singing through her veins and the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders, she realized something crucial. She wasn't afraid anymore. You want to know if I'll turn against you? Alara lowered her hands, and the flames dimmed to a gentle glow. Ask yourselves what you've given me to be loyal to. You bound my power as a child, murdered my parents when they tried to free me, forced me into a mate bond with a male who saw me as property. Her gaze swept across the council. You've given me every reason to burn this entire system to the ground. Every reason to walk away and let the darkness take you. Silence fell like a stone. But I won't. The words hung in the air, heavy with promise, because despite everything, I still believe in what we could be. In what the pacts were meant to be before politics and fear corrupted everything. She turned slowly, making eye contact with as many wolves as possible. The prophecy doesn't say I have to save you. It says I have the power to. The choice is mine. Her flames blazed brighter. So here's my offer. Accept me. Accept what I am, and what I represent. Work with me to prepare for what's coming, and I'll use every ounce of this power to protect you, to fight for you, to be the weapon you need against the darkness. And if we refuse? Cyrus asked, his voice carefully neutral. Ilara's smile was sharp as broken glass. Then I walk away. Take Kale and his pack, and anyone else who wants to survive what's coming, and we build our own defense, our own future. She let that sink in. And when the darkness rises, when it tears through your territories and devours everything you've built, you'll have no one to blame but yourselves. That's blackmail, Garrett snarled. No, that's reality. Kale's voice cut in, commanding and absolute. He moved to stand beside Alara, his presence solid and unwavering. The darkness is already here, already testing our borders, corrupting rogues, turning wolves into something twisted and wrong. His amber eyes blazed. I've been fighting it for 5 years, ever since my sister died, trying to stop it. And I'm telling you now, without Alara, without her power, we don't stand a chance. He's right. The old woman thumped her staff again. I've seen it in the bones. Read it in the stars. The breach between worlds is widening. Within a year, maybe less, the shadow realm will tear open completely. And when it does, everything that lives there, every nightmare, every monster, every corrupted soul, will pour into our world like a flood. Horror rippled through the assembled wolves. Even the hardest alphas looked shaken. This is convenient timing, Ronan said, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. The girl appears, claims to be our savior, and suddenly we're facing apocalypse? How do we know this isn't manipulation? How do we know? The ground shook. It started as a tremor, barely noticeable, but within seconds the entire amphitheater was rattling. Chunks of stone broke free from the walls. Wolves stumbled, struggling to keep their feet. And through the chaos, a sound rose from somewhere deep beneath the earth. A howl that belonged to nothing living. They're here, the old woman whispered, her face going pale. Mother Moon, save us. They're already here. The ground split open at the edge of the amphitheater, and darkness poured out like liquid night. It moved with purpose, with hunger, spreading across the stone in tendrils that seemed to drink in the light. And from within that darkness came shapes, twisted, wrong, things that had once been wolves but were now something else entirely. Shadow beasts, corrupted by the darkness, transformed into creatures that existed half in this world and half in the realm beyond. Their eyes glowed red as blood, their forms constantly shifting and reforming, and their presence radiated pure malevolence. There were dozens of them. Panic erupted. Wolves shifted, preparing to fight or flee. Alphas shouted orders that were lost in the chaos, and the shadow beasts advanced, their movements eerily coordinated, clearly hunting for something. For her. Ilara felt their attention lock onto her like a physical weight. They'd come for the silver blessed, come to extinguish her light before she could become what the prophecy promised, and they wouldn't stop until she was dead, or until they were. Everyone get back. Ilara's voice cut through the panic like a blade. Get to the upper tiers and stay there. We fight, one alpha roared, his wolf already halfway shifted. No. Kale's command stopped him cold. You can't fight them. Normal weapons don't work on shadow beasts. Claws and teeth can't touch them. His eyes met Ilara's, and in that gaze she saw absolute faith. But she can. The shadow beasts charged. Ilara met them head on. The silver flames exploded from her body in a wave of pure power, crashing into the darkness like a tsunami against the shore. Where the fire touched, the shadow beasts shrieked, a sound that scraped against the soul, and their forms began to dissolve. But there were so many, too many. For every one she destroyed, two more emerged from the breach in the earth. She couldn't do this alone. But she wasn't alone. Kale appeared at her side, his own power flaring, different from hers, darker, more primal, but complementary. Where her flames burned, his strength held. They moved together like they'd been fighting side by side for years, instead of weeks, anticipating each other's movements, covering each other's weaknesses. And then others joined them. The old woman, her staff blazing with silver fire of her own, weaker than Ilara's but still potent. Sarah wielding weapons that had been blessed by ancient rituals, able to cut through shadow if not destroy it. Even some of the council members, recognizing that survival meant setting aside politics and fighting together. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The amphitheater became a war zone of light and darkness, silver flames against liquid shadow, hope against despair. Ilara poured everything she had into the fight, feeling her power strain against limits she'd never tested. And just when she thought she couldn't give any more, she felt it. The bond. Not just with Kale, though that golden thread blazed brighter than ever, but with every wolf in the amphitheater, with the land itself, with the ancient magic that had built this place, and waited centuries for someone to wake it. She wasn't just channeling her own power anymore, she was channeling theirs, all of theirs, drawing on the collective strength of hundreds of shifters and funneling it through the silver flames until they burned white hot. Ilara raised her hands to the sky and screamed. The flames erupted upward in a pillar of light that could probably be seen for miles. They spread outward in a dome that encompassed the entire amphitheater, and everywhere they touched, the darkness burned away. The shadow beasts didn't just die, they ceased to exist, unmade on a fundamental level by power older than memory. The breach in the ground sealed itself with a sound like reality stitching back together. The tendrils of darkness retreated, fleeing back to whatever hell they'd come from. And within seconds, the amphitheater was clear. Silent. Every shadow beast destroyed. Every trace of corruption burned away. Ilara lowered her hands slowly, the flames dimming but not disappearing. She turned to face the assembled wolves, all of whom were staring at her like she'd just performed a miracle. Maybe she had. "This is what's coming," she said, her voice hoarse but clear. "This is what you'll face if you choose to fight without me. They're just scouts, testing our defenses, seeing how strong we've become." She met Cyrus's eyes. "The real invasion will be 100 times worse, 1,000 times. And when it comes, you'll need every advantage you can get." Cyrus looked old suddenly. Tired, But when he spoke, his voice was firm. "What do you need?" "Your loyalty." Alara glanced at Kale, drawing strength from his presence. "Your trust, your willingness to follow me into battle, even though I'm young and inexperienced, and terrify you." She turned back to the council. "In your acknowledgement that the old ways, the politics and power plays and corruption, end now, we become what we were always meant to be, united, strong." Her flames pulsed. "Or we die divided." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Cyrus dropped to one knee. One by one, the other council members followed. Then the alphas, then their wolves. Until every single shifter in the amphitheater was kneeling before Alara, their heads bowed in acknowledgement of what she was. What she'd always been. Morgana reborn, the Silver Queen. Their salvation. Only two remained standing. Garrett and Ronan, their faces twisted with fury and fear, backing slowly toward the exit. "Going somewhere?" Kale's voice was silk over steel. "This isn't over," Garrett spat. "You think one battle makes you queen?" "I think you murdered her parents," Kale interrupted, his power flooding the space. "I think you've committed treason against the very laws you claim to uphold, and I think," his smile was terrifying, "your time is done." Guards moved to apprehend them, but Alara raised a hand. "Let them go." Kale looked at her sharply. "Alara, let them go," she repeated. "They'll run to their allies, tell everyone what happened here, spread fear and doubt." Her eyes locked on Garrett. "And when the darkness comes for them, because it will come for the ones who sow division, they'll remember this moment. Remember that they could have been protected, could have been saved." Her flames blazed brighter, but they chose fear instead. Garrett and Ronan fled. And Alara let them, because she understood something now that she hadn't before. She couldn't save everyone. Some people would always choose darkness, would always fight against the light, would always prefer comfortable lies over difficult truths. But the ones who remained, the ones kneeling before her now with hope in their eyes and faith in their hearts, they were worth fighting for. They were worth everything. Chapter 9. The aftermath felt like standing in the eye of a storm. Alara remained at the center of the amphitheater as the wolves slowly rose from their knees, their expressions a mixture of awe, relief, and lingering fear. She could feel their emotions pressing against her consciousness. The silver flames had opened something inside her, a connection to the pack consciousness that she was only beginning to understand. They believed in her now. But belief born from desperation was fragile, easily shattered. "We have work to do." Cyrus's voice carried across the space, steady despite the chaos they'd just survived. "The defenses need to be reinforced, patrols doubled. Every pack needs to prepare for what's coming." He turned to face Alara fully, and she saw something she hadn't expected in his ancient eyes. Respect. "And we need to learn from her. Learn how to fight what we just faced." "I'll teach you what I can," Alara said, though exhaustion was already creeping through her bones. Using that much power had cost her more than she wanted to admit. "But I'm still learning myself, still discovering what I'm capable of." "Then we learn together." The old woman approached, leaning heavily on her staff, and placed a wrinkled hand on Alara's shoulder. "You did well today, child. Better than well. You saved lives, proved yourself, made them see." Her voice dropped lower, meant only for Alara. "But this is just the beginning. The real test is still to come." Alara knew that, could feel it in her bones, in the way the silver flames still hummed with restless energy beneath her skin. The shadow beasts had been scouts, as she'd said. The darkness was testing them, learning their weaknesses, preparing for something larger, something that would require everything she had and more. Kale appeared at her side, his hand finding hers naturally, and the golden thread between them pulsed with warmth. "You're exhausted," he murmured. "Let me get you out of here." "I can't leave yet. There's still—" "Yes, you can." His voice was gentle but firm. "You've done enough for one day. Let the council handle the logistics. Let them start coordinating the defense." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "You need to rest, to recover. You can't protect anyone if you burn yourself out. He was right. She hated that he was right. But the truth was undeniable. Her legs felt like water, her head was spinning, and the flames that had burned so bright were now flickering weakly. She nodded. They left the amphitheater together, Kale supporting most of her weight, though he made it look effortless. Behind them, she could hear the council already organizing. Alphas pledging their packs to the unified defense, wolves who'd been enemies an hour ago now working together. It should have felt like victory. But all Alara could think about was Garrett and Ronan, fleeing into the wilderness, about Marcus, broken and defeated, but still alive, about all the wolves who hadn't knelt, who'd slipped away during the chaos, who would carry their fear and resentment back to their territories. Not everyone would accept her. Not everyone would fight beside her when the real darkness came. And some of them would actively work against her. I can hear you thinking, Kale said softly, as they walked through the forest surrounding the amphitheater. Night had fallen while they'd been inside, and the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance. You're wondering if you did enough. If you said the right things. If you could have convinced them all. Shouldn't I be? The words came out sharper than intended. People are going to die because of the choices made today. Because I let Garrett and Ronan go. Because I couldn't save everyone. Kale stopped walking, turning her to face him. In the moonlight, his eyes burned with that familiar amber glow, and his expression was fierce. Alara, listen to me. You are not responsible for other people's choices. You offered them salvation. You proved your power. You showed them exactly what you're willing to fight for. His hands framed her face. The ones who walked away, they made their choice, and they'll have to live with the consequences. Will they? Her voice cracked. Or will they die with those consequences? Will I watch them get torn apart by shadow beasts because I couldn't find the right words to make them believe? Maybe. His honesty was brutal but necessary. Maybe some of them will die. Maybe a lot of them will die. Because that's what war is. Alara. That's what this prophecy demanded the moment you were born into it. He pressed his forehead to hers. But their blood is not on your hands. The darkness's blood is on your hands. The monster's blood, not theirs. Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. All the fear she'd been holding back, all the weight of what she just claimed to be, came crashing down at once. What if I'm not strong enough? She whispered. What if when the real battle comes, I fail? What if I let everyone down? Then you fail trying. Kale's voice was steady as stone, and I'll be right there beside you, failing with you, because that's what mates do. That's what love is. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. You heard me say it, didn't you? In the amphitheater, when I called you my mate in front of everyone. She had. The word had branded itself across her heart. I meant it, he continued. Not because of prophecy, or politics, or convenience, but because when I look at you, I see my future. I see the female I want to build a world with. The one I want standing beside me when everything falls apart. His smile was slight, but devastating. The one I love, even though we've only known each other a few weeks. Even though logic says it's impossible. Kale, her voice broke completely. You don't have to say it back. Don't have to feel the same way yet. I just need you to know. His thumb brushed away her tears. That you're not alone in this. You never will be. Whatever comes, whoever doubts you, whatever darkness rises, I'm yours, completely, irrevocably, until the end of everything. The words shattered something inside her. Some last wall she'd been holding on to, some final piece of armor she'd worn. For so long she'd forgotten it was there, and what poured out in its place was terrifying and beautiful all at once. I love you too, she whispered. I don't know how, don't know when it happened, but I do. I love you and it terrifies me, and I don't want to lose you when. He kissed her. Kissed her, like the world was ending, and they were the only two people left in it. Kissed her like she was oxygen and hope, and everything worth fighting for. And Alara kissed him back with everything she had, pouring all her fear and love and desperate hope into the connection between them. The silver flames and his darker power twined together, dancing in the air around them like living things celebrating their union. The golden thread binding them blazed so bright, it was visible to anyone watching, a declaration written in light and magic that they were bonded, mated, two halves of one impossible whole. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kale's smile was radiant. "Come on," he said, taking her hand. "Let's go home." Home. The word settled into her chest like an anchor. Not the place she'd fled from, not the pack that had rejected her, but wherever Kale was, wherever she could be herself without fear or shame or apology. That was home. They reached Shadow Peak territory, as dawn began painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The pack was waiting, having heard news of what happened at the council through some mysterious wolf communication network that Alara still didn't fully understand. When she and Kale appeared, the entire pack dropped to one knee. "My queen," they said in unison, and the title that should have felt foreign instead felt right. Alara looked out at them, these wolves who'd accepted her when no one else would, who'd fought beside her against impossible odds, who were pledging their lives to a female they barely knew because they believed in what she represented. And she made them a promise. "I will protect you," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the morning stillness. "I will fight for you. I will use every ounce of power I have to keep you safe from what's coming." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But I need you to do something for me in return." They waited, expectant. "Don't worship me. Don't put me on a pedestal so high I'll break when I fall." Her gaze swept across them. "See me as I am, powerful. Yes, but also afraid, uncertain, still learning, still making mistakes." The silver flames pulsed gently. "Stand beside me, not behind me. Question me when I'm wrong. Challenge me when I'm being stupid. Help me become what I need to be, because I can't do it alone." Sarah was the first to rise, a fierce smile on her face. "We can do that." One by one, the others rose too, and Alara saw understanding in their eyes. Not blind faith, but something better. Partnership, unity, the beginning of something that could actually withstand what was coming. Maybe, if they were strong enough, if they were smart enough, if the darkness didn't tear them apart before they were ready. That night, Alara stood on her cliff again, looking out at the valley, where the lunar sanctum glowed softly in the distance. Kale was behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Do you ever wonder," she said quietly, "if the prophecy got it wrong, if I'm not actually the one meant to save everyone?" "Every day," he admitted. "But then I watch you fight, watch you love, watch you keep choosing hope, even when you have every reason to give in to despair." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "And I think maybe the prophecy doesn't matter. Maybe what matters is that you keep trying, keep fighting, keep being exactly who you are." Alara leaned back against him, drawing strength from his presence. "The darkness is coming. I know. People are going to die. I know. And we might not be enough to stop it. I know." His arms tightened around her. "But we're going to try anyway, because that's what heroes do. They try even when success isn't guaranteed. They fight even when the odds are impossible." His voice dropped to a whisper. "They love even when it hurts." Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, then another, and another, until the entire valley was filled with the sound, a chorus of voices raised in defiance of the darkness, in hope for the future, in faith that the Silver Queen would lead them to victory or die trying. Alara closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. She was scared, terrified, actually, of what was coming, of the responsibility she'd claimed, of the very real possibility that she'd fail and watch everyone she loved die because of it. But she was also ready, ready to fight, ready to lead, ready to become the weapon the prophecy promised and the queen her people needed, ready to burn bright enough to drive back the darkness, or die trying. "So let me ask you something, friend. If you'd been there in that amphitheater, watching Alara claim her power, would you have knelt, Would you have pledged your loyalty to a female you barely knew, based on prophecy and power and desperate hope? Or would you have been one of the ones who walked away? Who chose fear over faith? Who decided that the devil you knew was safer than the savior you didn't? Because here's the truth. We're all faced with that choice eventually, not about literal prophecies or shadow beasts, but about the moment when someone challenges everything we believe, when the comfortable lies we've built our lives on start crumbling, when we have to decide whether to embrace change or cling to what's familiar. Ilara was just a rejected Omega, a girl who'd been told her whole life that she was nothing, that she should be grateful for scraps, that her power was a curse instead of a gift. And she chose to believe differently. She chose to stand up, to fight back, to claim what was hers, even though it terrified her, even though she had no guarantee of success, even though everyone told her she was wrong. That's the real magic, isn't it? Not the silver flames or the prophecy or the dramatic battles, but the courage to become who you're meant to be, even when the entire world is telling you to stay small. So if this story lit something inside you, if Ilara's journey resonated with your own struggles, or gave you hope, or just made you feel something real, do me a favor. Subscribe to Clarissa Romance Collections, because this is what we do here. We tell stories that burn, stories about women who refuse to stay broken, about love that defies logic, about power claimed and destinies fulfilled, and the beautiful, terrifying journey of becoming. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, drop a comment telling me what you thought of Ilara's story. Tell me if you would have knelt or walked away. Tell me what scared you, what inspired you, what made you believe. Because here, we're building something more than a channel. We're building a community of people who understand that sometimes the most powerful magic is simply refusing to give up, refusing to stay silent, refusing to let fear win. And that's a kind of fire worth spreading. Chapter 10. 6 days passed in preparation. The packs worked with frantic energy, building defenses, training warriors, learning what little they could about fighting shadow beasts from the few texts that remained from the ancient wars. Ilara spent her days teaching small groups how to recognize corruption, how to spot the signs of darkness taking root in their territories. And her nights belonged to Kale. They didn't speak much during those quiet hours. Didn't need to. They'd lie tangled together in his chambers, her back pressed against his chest, his arms wrapped around her like he could shield her from what was coming through sheer will alone. Sometimes she'd trace the brand on his ribs, the mark of Morgana he'd carried for 5 years. Sometimes he'd kiss the scars on her wrists where the binding magic had left its mark. They were healing each other, slowly, carefully, building something real in the spaces between prophecy and destiny. But the peace couldn't last. It never did. Ilara woke on the 7th night to find Kale already dressed, standing at the window of their chamber with his jaw clenched tight. She knew that posture, had learned to read every line of tension in his body over the past weeks. Something was wrong. Kale? She sat up, the furs pooling around her waist. What is it? He didn't turn around. The scouts just returned from the eastern border. 3 packs have gone silent in the last 48 hours. No communication, no distress signals, just silence. Cold dread settled in her stomach. Shadow beasts? Maybe. Or something worse. He finally turned to face her, and the worry in his eyes made her chest tighten. The last message we received before they went dark mentioned a woman, said she appeared at their borders 3 days ago, claiming to be silver blessed. Claiming to be me. The word fell like a stone. Not you. Someone pretending to be you. His expression was grim. Using your name. Your power. Or something that looks enough like your power to fool wolves who've never seen the real thing. Ilara's mind raced. That's impossible. There hasn't been another silver blessed in centuries, the old woman said. The old woman said the bloodline went underground. Hid itself. Kale crossed to the bed, sitting on its edge. What if it didn't just hide? What if someone found a way to replicate it? To create something that could pass for silver blessed without actually being divine? Dark magic. The realization hit her like a physical blow. They're creating false prophets, false saviors, to sow confusion, to make the packs doubt which one is real, or to make them think the prophecy itself is a lie. Kale's hand found hers, gripping tight. If there are multiple silver-blessed females appearing, all claiming to be Morgana reborn, all demonstrating power, how do the packs know which one to follow? How do they know who to trust? They trust me. But even as Alara said it, doubt crept in. Don't they? The ones who saw you fight at the council do. The ones who felt your power, who watched you destroy shadow beasts and seal the breach. They know. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But the packs that weren't there? The ones who only heard stories? If someone shows up claiming to be you, demonstrating similar power, he trailed off, but the implication was clear. They'd believe the imposter, would pledge loyalty to darkness wearing her face. We have to stop them. Alara threw off the furs, already moving toward her clothes. We have to find whoever's doing this. And what? Kale's voice stopped her. Kill someone who might actually be innocent? Someone who might genuinely believe they're silver-blessed, because the darkness has convinced them? He shook his head. This is the brilliance of it, Alara. We can't just destroy the problem, because doing so makes us look like tyrants. Makes you look like someone who'd kill rivals to maintain power. She wanted to argue, wanted to rage against the unfairness of it, but he was right. Every move they made could be twisted, used against them, turned into proof that she was the threat the darkness wanted everyone to believe she was. So what do? We go to the Eastern Territories. We find these silent packs, and we discover what really happened to them. Kale stood, his expression resolute. And if we find this imposter, we expose her, prove she's false without destroying her, show the packs the difference between real divine power and whatever corruption is masquerading as it. It sounded simple, logical. It sounded like a trap. They left at dawn with a contingent of 20 wolves, enough to handle trouble, few enough to move quickly. Sira came, as did several of Kale's most trusted warriors. The old woman insisted on joining despite her age, claiming her knowledge of ancient magic might be needed. The journey to the Eastern Territories took 2 days of hard travel, and with every mile, Alara felt the wrongness growing. The forest was too quiet. No birds singing, no small animals rustling through underbrush. Even the wind seemed muted, like the world itself was holding its breath. Something's watching us, Sarah murmured, her hand on her weapon. Can you feel it? Alara could. The silver flames flickered restlessly beneath her skin, responding to a presence she couldn't quite identify. Not shadow beasts. Those she'd learned to recognize instantly. This was something else. Something that felt almost familiar but twisted. Wrong. They reached the first silent pack's territory, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The village was intact. That was the first horror. No signs of battle, no blood, no bodies. The homes stood untouched, doors open as if the inhabitants had simply walked away mid-task. A pot still hung over a cold fire pit. Children's toys lay scattered in the dirt, and everywhere was that oppressive silence. Where are they? One of Kale's wolves whispered, fear evident in his voice. Gone. The old woman's voice was tight with tension. She'd stopped at the village's edge, her staff planted firmly in the ground. Taken. Not killed. Taken. Taken where? Kale demanded. Into the shadow realm. The old woman pointed with a gnarled finger toward the center of the village, where Alara now noticed something that made her blood run cold. A symbol burned into the earth. Not carved. Burned, as if branded by flame. Silver flame. Her flame. No. Alara breathed, moving toward it despite Kale's warning hand on her arm. I didn't do this. I've never been here. I would never. We know. Kale's voice was firm, but they don't. Whoever finds this, whoever sees your mark burned into the ground where an entire pack vanished, they'll believe you did it. The trap was even more insidious than she'd imagined, not just creating a false prophet, but framing her for atrocities. making the packs fear her, making them see her as the monster, instead of their salvation. "This is just the beginning," the old woman said quietly. "The darkness isn't just creating confusion, it's systematically destroying your credibility, your reputation, making sure that when the real invasion comes, the packs will be too fractured, too suspicious of each other, too afraid of you to mount a unified defense." "Then we prove it's not her," Sarah said firmly. "We find evidence, we track whoever did this, and—" The scream cut through the air like a knife. It came from the second village, half a mile to the north, a sound of pure terror that raised every hair on Alara's body. Without thinking, she ran toward it, the silver flames erupting across her skin as she moved. She burst into the second village's center to find chaos. Shadow beasts poured from a breach in the earth, dozens of them, attacking the wolves who'd been investigating, but that wasn't what made Alara's heart stop. Standing in the middle of the carnage, wreathed in silver flames that looked almost like Alara's own, was a woman. She was young, maybe 20, with white blonde hair and eyes that glowed with power, and she was laughing as the shadow beast tore through the defenders, laughing as blood painted the ground, laughing as if destruction itself was the most beautiful thing she'd ever witnessed. "You," the woman said when she spotted Alara, and her smile was radiant and terrible. "Finally. I've been waiting for you, sister." "Sister." The word echoed through Alara's mind like a death knell. "I don't have a sister," Alara said, the silver flames blazing brighter in response to her fury. "Don't you?" The woman tilted her head, and for one horrible moment, Alara saw the resemblance, the shape of her face, the curve of her jaw, features that could have come from the same bloodline. "Did you really think you were the only one? The only child Morgana's legacy could produce?" "That's impossible. The bloodline splits," the woman interrupted. "Branches, creates multiple heirs across generations. Most of them never manifest the power. Most of them live ordinary lives and die ordinary deaths." Her smile widened, but every few centuries, two are born at the same time, twins separated by distance and circumstance, light and shadow, salvation and destruction. She spread her arms wide, and the shadow beasts stopped their attack, as if awaiting her command. "You got the pretty prophecy, sister, the divine calling, the destiny of a savior." "And you?" Alara asked, though dread already told her the answer. "I got the truth." The woman's flames flickered, and Alara saw they weren't pure silver. They were threaded through with veins of darkness, corruption eating away at the light. "I got to see what the prophecy really means, what being silver-blessed actually costs, and I decided," her expression turned cold as winter, "I'd rather burn it all down than serve it." She raised her hand, and the shadow beasts lunged. Not at Alara, at Kale. Everything happened in slow motion. Alara screaming, the silver flames exploding outward, Kale shifting mid-leap, his wolf form massive and dark, the clash of power and claws, and desperate futile resistance. And through it all, the woman laughing. When the dust settled, Kale was on his knees, blood streaming from a dozen wounds. The shadow beasts retreated back through the breach, and the woman stood untouched, her corrupted flames dancing merrily across her skin. "This was just a message," she said, conversationally. "From the darkness you think you can fight. From the destiny you think you can control." She looked directly at Alara. "You're not the hero of this story, sister. You're just another sacrifice waiting to happen." She stepped backward into the breach, and it sealed behind her with a sound like reality tearing, leaving Alara standing in the ruins, with Kale bleeding at her feet, and the old woman's words echoing in her mind. "The true alpha hasn't risen yet." Alara dropped to her knees beside Kale, her hands already glowing with healing light. "Stay with me," she whispered, pouring everything she had into closing his wounds. "Don't you dare leave me. Not now, not when." "I'm not going anywhere," he managed, though his voice was weak. "Takes more than a few shadow beasts to kill me." But they both knew the truth. This wasn't a victory. It was a warning shot. And somewhere out there, In territories they hadn't reached yet, a woman wearing Alara's face and wielding corrupted power was dismantling everything they'd built, was sowing seeds of doubt and fear, was preparing the world for an invasion that would make the council attack look like child's play. The silver flames flickered weakly beneath Alara's skin as exhaustion finally caught up with her. She'd thought finding her power would be the end of her journey, thought claiming her destiny would be enough. But destiny, she was learning, was just the beginning. And the real war, the one that would determine not just the fate of the packs, but the survival of their entire world, was only just starting. The old woman appeared beside her, placing a gentle hand on Alara's shoulder. "There's something I didn't tell you," she said quietly, "something the prophecy mentions, but I hoped wouldn't come to pass." Alara looked up at her, vision blurring with exhaustion and unshed tears. "What?" "Before Morgana can truly rise, before the Silver Queen can claim her throne and unite the packs against the darkness," the old woman's expression was grave. "She must first defeat her shadow self, must face the darkness within her own bloodline, and either destroy it," she paused, "or be destroyed by it." "You're saying I have to kill her?" "Not a question. A statement of terrible fact. I'm saying one of you has to die." The old woman's voice was soft but final. "The prophecy is clear. 2 heirs cannot exist in the same world. One must fall so the other can rise. Light or shadow, salvation or destruction." Her fingers tightened on Alara's shoulder. "And the choice of which one survives, that will be written in blood and fire before this is over." Thunder rumbled overhead, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, a sound of mourning, of war approaching on silent wings. And deep beneath the earth, in the shadow realm where nightmares were born and darkness reigned eternal, something ancient stirred. Something that had been waiting for this moment for 3,000 years. The Silver Queen had finally awakened, and so had her opposite. Let the true battle begin. The end. Or is it? The story continues in Silver Queen Rising, The Shadow War. Coming soon to Clarissa Romance Collections.